So I was working with a coaching client, it was probably about a year ago. I will call him John. And he came into coaching because he was feeling less than inspired at work. He was feeling flat. He was feeling sort of underappreciated. And he wanted to explore either how he could find that spark, again, in his current role, or find it elsewhere. And so in the coaching process, we started to explore what creates the spark for him, what brings the most passion, where his strengths are, where he feels most alive. And we looked at if there are ways in his current role that he could tweak it, or he could make a request to change what his duties and responsibilities were. And he realized that it was just limited in scope, that it really wasn't possible, and that he had outgrown his role. So we started to explore different possibilities. And coaching is all about creating new awareness and then creating new actions. So in that process, he explored what brings him the greatest challenge, makes him feel most alive, what the skill sets are, the industries that he wanted to work in. And he started to do some informational interviews, and he found in that process a position that he was really excited about. And so he applied, and it was really intense. He had to, I don't even remember everything. In addition to applying, he had to do a case study. He had to do multiple interviews, individual interviews with different members of the team, as well as a group interview. He had to do a mock presentation. And he worked really hard in the coaching to prepare himself. And in one of our coaching sessions, he came in and he's like, "Darcy, I just found out I got the job." And he was so excited. So we start coaching around how he's going to transition out of his current role. I learned really early on, well, it was actually my first job out of college, when I was sort of getting frustrated. I was no longer inspired and was ready to move on. And I didn't realize that that was showing up in the energy. And my boss said to me, "Darcy, remember, how you leave a job is more important than how you start. And how you start is pretty darn important." And I was like, oh my gosh, I just felt so exposed and embarrassed. And that was the best lesson that I could learn back in college. So we talked about how he could transition out, how he could really feel good about closing that door, not burning any bridges, appreciating who he wanted to really recognize in a formal and informal way, how he was going to tell people from his inner circle, the A-list, to clients, to colleagues, who would want to know about it personally, who would want a phone call, who would want an email, who would feel sad if they read about it in a company newsletter. And in the coaching, it came the time where he was starting his new role. And we talked also about who he wanted to be, how he wanted to show up, his first 100 days, all of that. He texted me after his first day on the new job, and he said, "Darcy, I think I made a mistake. It was awful." I said, "What was awful?" He said, "It was so uninspiring. I got there and it was all policies and procedures. I walked in, I had all this paperwork, I had things that I had to sign and bring my social security card and my driver's license, I had to fill out benefits." And he said, I thought this was going to be the right move, and I'm second guessing it. And I'm wondering if it is." Today we're exploring how to have thoughtfully fit onboarding for new employees. Instead of only focusing on the policies and procedures, how do you focus on the culture and the connection? How do you create an environment where your new employee feels inspired, where their first impression is one that they're like, yes, I made the right decision. They might still feel nervous and uncertain because it was a big leap, a big shift, a new position, but they feel excited, they feel motivated, they feel connected. And so I encourage you to think about, if you are in an organization, if you're a team lead, if you are a part of a company where you have new employees coming on board, how do you thoughtfully welcome them on their first day? This is what we're exploring this week, this month actually. Every week we send out our Thoughtfully Fit Tips newsletter on Wednesdays. So if you haven't gotten it, yesterday, the first one went out, talk about onboarding from the employer side. Next week we'll talk about it from an employee side. How do you start and have a really powerful first day, first week, first month on the job? And then in 3 weeks or in 2 weeks, whatever that is, the third week in March, Jill on my team is going to talk about onboarding from her perspective and how many times it was just less than inspiring. And when you look at being thoughtfully fit, it's all about being intentional, being mindful in what you're doing, and being considerate. And so I'd like to invite you to pause for a moment and think about, how do you create an intentional, thoughtful onboarding process for new employees? And maybe you don't. It's all about creating new awareness. And so if you're sitting there thinking, wow, I never even thought about that. We go through parking passes and, vacation days and compliance and all of that. I want you to also think about the culture and the connection. So it may be something as simple as what, if putting yourself in their shoes and they walk in on the first day, what would help them to feel excited? Maybe it's just a plant and a Snickers bar on their desk with a card saying, welcome, so excited, it's your first day, come on into my office when you get here. Something thoughtful. It makes an impact. It's a first impression, a new first impression on a first day when somebody is nervous. Maybe when they come into your office, instead of starting with the paperwork, and if you're in a big corporation, probably HR takes care of all of that. In your smaller organization, they may not. But thinking about, how do you want to establish a connection? How do you want to establish safety and trust and intimacy with this new employee so that they feel like they can show up fully, that they can be vulnerable? That's the number one dysfunction of high-performing teams. Of teams that prevents them from becoming high performing is a lack of trust. And one of the things that creates trust is vulnerability. So how can you create a space for connection, for vulnerability? And I think there's a couple of things that you can do. Some of the things we talk about all the time. How do you design that alliance with a new employee? Part of it is sharing what the culture is, what the expectations are from your viewpoint, what success looks like, why you're excited to have them on board, and what in a year, if things went fabulously well, what it would look like from your perspective. And then getting curious and asking the new employee some of those same questions. What kind of culture do you flourish in? What do you need from me to feel really supported? How do we want to design our connection and our check-ins? What would best serve you? What if in a year from now, we were doing your annual review and you said, this was the best move I ever made? What happened? What does it look like? How did that first year go? What does success look like from your vantage point? How do we want to be together when it gets difficult, when it gets challenging? I'm going to disappoint you. You're going to let me down. We're human. It's going to happen. How do we want to design that? So it's about getting really clear on the expectations and making the invisible visible. Both of you have things in your head of what you're hoping for, what your fears are, what your wishes are, what it would look like if it was successful. It's all invisible. It's in your head. How do you articulate that and make it visible? How do you make that an important part of your onboarding process? In addition to all the logistics, all the processes and policies and procedures, how do you focus on the connection and the culture? Because the research shows 30% of new hires hourly salary leave within the first 4 months. 60% of senior level leave within the first 18 months. How do you create an environment in that first day, that first impression, that makes somebody want to commit to being there, to being engaged, to knowing that they made the right decision and that they're all in? Intentional, thoughtful onboarding. Pause and think about what you could do in your process, in your system of onboarding new clients, and then act from that place. And let me know how it goes. And maybe there's things that you do that really works, that is beyond the traditional first day logistics. I'd love to hear. Write the comments. Shoot me an email. What is it that you do? And I have to say, this is something I'm constantly learning about. We had new employees start. The last one that started was about 15 months ago. And we were so excited to have her that we just jumped right in. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, here's what we need. And I mean, literally, in hindsight, I was not very thoughtfully fit. In hindsight, I realized I was so excited for her to start that we just dove right in. I said, okay, here's where I need your help. Here's a project I've been working on. What do you think of this? It wasn't until much later that I paused to think, wait a minute, I missed something. And I had to go back and clean it up. It's progress, not perfection. Start where you are. If you've brought somebody on board and you didn't do it now. Start where you are. It's not too late. Just like if you want to get physically fit and you're not, it's not too late. Start right now. Finish the video and get down and do 20 sit-ups. Literally start right now. If you have an employee that came on board that you didn't do this with, that you haven't focused on creating that connection and looking at creating an intentional culture, do it now. Next week, we're going to talk about onboarding, and we're going to talk about from the employee's perspective. That first day, that first week, that first month. What do you do to be thoughtfully fit when you're starting a new job? So join me. I thank you so much. I love connecting. I just really, I hear so often stories of people who say, yeah, that video really sparked me to think. And I showed up differently. And here's what I did. I love that. So thank you so much for joining me every week, for sharing it. If you're inspired, if you think somebody else could benefit from this. And I also want to let you know that we have a new series that's starting in April. April 20th is the first day. It's a 4-month leadership series focused on the obstacles, what gets in the way of being high performing, all about thoughtfully fit. How to have courageous conversations, how to manage and be a leader effectively, how to bring coaching skills into your role. This is a training and a program that we do externally at companies, and we get great results. We've had some organizations ask us if we could create it that they can send some leaders to. Because if you do individual coaching, it's really powerful. And if you do group coaching, a program like this, not only do you get new awareness for yourself, but you also learn from the others who are there. And this is going to be limited to 14 people. So if you are in the Madison area, it's a half day every month for 4 months. There's accountability groups in between. There's videos and articles and research in between. There's action items where you're going to leave each session and you're going to practice in the workplace in real time and come back. So there's designed accountability. So maybe it's something that you're thinking, gosh, I need a jolt. I need some structure to help me get to that next level in my career. Or maybe you're sitting there thinking, you're a manager, you're a team lead, and you've got some employees that you want to invest in and develop their skills. Reach out if you have any questions. Shoot us an email. Give us a call. DarcyLoma.com is my website. If you look under the Thoughtfully Fit tab, the third one, it says Increase Your Impact. That's the program. So let us know if you're interested in sending somebody to the series starting in April, or if you want to bring it into your company and do it with a cross-functional team or a leadership team. It's a really powerful workshop program, training, coaching. I would love to be a part of it with you. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody. Have a great week.